Sales meeting for Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Which
Tuesday is it?
We're a little light today on staff.
I haven't been late for years.
But we are social distanced, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, it gave us a little bit more room, so Tom's got the day off and Janet's in pretty heavy-duty meeting, so
Yeah.
we thought we'd give it a shot. What do you think?
She's at the NAR conference having a good time from the comfort of her office.
Yes, it has just started.
Aw.
It's going on for like 6 weeks. You know, it's usually like a 4-day conference where it's 4 days of meetings and then.
But that's all
one or two
in
events.
person stuff, right?
It's all in person. It's supposed to be in New Orleans right now.
Oh, and Janet's not happy
she's
about
not
that
happy,
at all.
no.
She wanted to go
Because
to
that's
New
her
Orleans?
favorite place.
We all wanted to go to New Orleans. I thought
really?
it was absolutely amazing last
Yeah.
time they had it there, and it was really pretty cool. It was 2 years after Katrina the last time it was there, I think, or 3. And they were doing a lot of revitalization.
Can we get a
stuff like
fact
that.
checker to check the date on that, please? Somebody out there.
Hey, I'm only 10 votes shy of the electoral college.
You're still in this thing.
I'm still in it.
No, but part of the fun of the conventions is being able to travel and see different
Yeah.
places. So this year you're gonna do it on Zoom.
That's right. And next year, I think we're going back to Boston or something like that, so it may not happen either. It was cold.
Well, it feels like you're traveling when you see everyone's virtual screens behind them and stuff. Feels like you're all over the world.
Mine
I'm
doesn't
always
work.
by Hoover.
Anyway, back
Some of them are in space, some of them
Yeah.
are planets.
That was
Yes.
before the
Where
whole
we
thing
wish
happened.
to be.
Some of them are in their kitchen.
Yeah,
I
that's-
wish
She
I
has
had
the
that
best
kitchen.
kitchen on the internet, I
Right?
guarantee it.
Yes.
Anyway, let's get a little serious. Let's turn some time over to you.
Oh, whoa.
Shelly
Super
Panzarella.
serious. Happy Tuesday, everyone. So have you heard? We're bringing back the $1,000 lender credit.
Yeah.
Yay!
Wait, it went away?
It did. Bishop, it did go away. So
Oh,
we're
I
bringing it back.
have to have a closing for that.
So we know that right now the market as far as seller contributions has gotten a little bit tighter, and so hopefully this will help to kind of bridge that gap for our borrowers, and we can bring in another or 2 or 3 or 4 additional closings by the end of the year. So reach out to your Prosperity Lending loan officers. Actually, we got a good response yesterday from the Mortgage Moment and people reaching out. So grateful that you all did that. You can reach out to us on Facebook or reach out to me, and then I'll put you in contact with a loan officer who is fielded in whichever office you plan on occupying often.
So on the credit, because it's a question we have coming up later on the closing disclosure, how does it show up? Is it a reduction of fees or just money?
Just
Making it rain.
It's a video of Shelly just standing up there making it
Oh,
rain.
is that how it does it? It's not like this.
No,
Not however you want it to be.
it's not like this.
Okay, so it is actually, great question. It's a.
I know, I wrote it down.
You will see it on the loan estimate as well as the closing disclosure, and it truly is just a flat $1,000 fee that goes on there. Comes
Gotcha.
right off the.
So it's
comes
a
right off
credit
the-
from Prosperity?
It is, yeah, lender credit.
How does it apply in with the credit caps? Like if I'm, doing FHA loan, I think FHA is now, is it 6%?
6%.
VA is 4%.
Correct.
And so does it apply in that as part of that
It is
credit?
part of it, yeah. So realtor, seller, lender, credit, all,
All across the board.
yeah, it's included in the max contribution.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
That's awesome.
The other thing I wanted to just be aware of is, last election, which was what, 2016?
No, it was
if I go
last week.
forward. Oh, yeah. We're still
going.
going, right?
Yeah.
So we're not,
Oh, the one
clearly
before this week.
undecided still here on this table on if it's over or not. Anyway, so when.
Too early to call.
When after the election, rates actually shot up, so there's some thought that that's going to happen. There's been some, obviously the stock market has really done well since.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're, usually when stocks go up, rates go down, so stocks go up, rates go up, and so we're starting to see a little bit of a trend upwards on rates, but
So this
still
is the
very
only
low.
thumbs up we don't like.
That's right,
But
we
do you
don't
think,
like that.
do you think that was caused by the actual election or by the news that there may be a vaccine that's 90% effective? Everyone kind of shifted really quick to the vaccine was the cause, not the undetermined election.
It did come out, primarily I think it was the vaccine, and everybody, obviously stocks, everybody got excited about that from the emotional standpoint, and so for us, the alternate side of it is people pull from the bonds and go into the stocks, and so the rates shoot up.
Yeah, I heard it was twofold. It was the possibility of the Republicans being able to control the Senate to balance that power, and then the vaccine.
They haven't made a decision on the House though yet, right? It's pretty close. It's
There's
like
a lot of
within 12.
glitches.
Yeah.
There's a lot of glitches right now.
Do you notice how they do those little diagrams where it's all these little dots and then there's this dot space with no dots? That's the whole problem with Congress. There's a dot space with no dots.
I have
Those
no
seats
idea
are
what
empty.
I was like,
No clue what he's talking
The
about.
seats haven't been filled yet.
Yeah.
oh, I got it.
That's what it is.
So that's all that I have.
Very good. So that brings up a topic, though. We were going to talk about the closing statement.
Yes.
Right? Talking about the lender credit being on there. It's the responsibility of the agent actually to review those documents.
So remember when they came out with the TILA RESPA disclosure that, all the companies were requiring that you actually had to have signed authorization from your client to give you access to the closing documents? And, the lenders kept giving those documents out to agents, but some of them said, no, you have to have this. Escrow said, no, you have to have this document. And then it kind of went away. But I think the process there was agents were in the habit of always reviewing the closing disclosure, or the HUD as we used to call it. And
Can we
making,
just go back to the HUD though?
I know, everyone gets that.
Colin, but
But there's a whole generation of agents that don't know what the hell you're
The
talking
closing
about.
disclosure is so confusing. It's supposed to be easier.
It is. It's in categories now
Yeah,
instead
for
of
me
just
it's-
on a page with categories. But
Yeah, I wish it was.
but the point is that you should absolutely be reviewing it for what?
Everything.
make sure the commission's on there.
Yeah, no, right?
That's usually
Oh, check, we're good. No, you're supposed to take the purchase agreement that
Yeah,
you
we're
wrote and all of your counteroffers and addendums and make sure that the items that you wrote in the document made it to the closing disclosure, because, people make mistakes, and you have an escrow assistant that's new and didn't see something or checked the wrong box, and you're the first test as the agent to make sure it's correct. And then, of course, the lender reviews it. And I love that Shelley goes to the closings, because when there's a mistake, it's her fault, not my fault. And that's why, no, I'm just kidding. But you've actually been there through that process to check and make sure it's correct. But closing cost credits, you don't want to miss that and be at the closing table and there's $2,000 worth of credits that didn't show up.
And how about a home warranty?
Yeah.
I mean, home warranty is supposed to be purchased, it gets missed, it never gets purchased, then you have issues with it after the fact. Who's responsible?
Transaction fees. If your transaction fee isn't on the closing document when your clients are signing, that's the first point where you need to say, oh my goodness, we missed something. But even before that, once you open escrow, you're confirming it to escrow. Here's the fee structure that we're charging on our side. You're confirming it when the docs show up. Hey, I just want to make sure you got these documents. And that's why they ask you for all these things on the commission order and the other stuff.
Well, we request that prior to signing. So
Yeah.
loan docs show up at escrow, and at that point, escrow will typically schedule an appointment for the buyer to come in and sign. And so between that time, we request that we get a copy of that so that I can review it, so that we're not sitting at not sitting there signing documents going, oh, this is that,
Needs
this
to be
is that.
changed.
So we try to get it early if possible. Now, I know some are in a rush and you can't do that, but
But there's a key there, you say you request them, because a lot of title companies don't automatically just
That's
send them to
right.
you.
Yeah, that's true.
And so don't just assume that you didn't get it, you don't need to look at it, you need to request it.
In a perfect world, I wrote a buyer's offer and I gave them a net sheet when I wrote the offer, telling them costs and expenses as an estimate. Then the offer gets accepted and I correct my net sheet to show corrected expenses, meaning that the transaction happened, here are the things that we know for the price, and I've corrected these documents based on all the information I've assembled. And so it would stand to reason that if I take my net sheet in my offer and I go to escrow and I get that closing disclosure, I've actually provided estimates that it would be helpful to know whether I'm close or not, because it's the whole idea of understanding the fee structure of what's being charged. How do you know you're getting a bad deal if you don't even understand what the estimate should be for what the costs are?
if you don't know the deal to begin with, you don't know whether it's good or bad, right?
The other thing that title isn't going to tell you is that most title companies, provide a discount based on certain parameters, but they don't just put it on the document. You have to physically ask.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that reconciliation dates, like the closing date that they actually factor it by, they could be off by a week and a half. And so your prorations could be different than they should be. The close date could be a misunderstanding where you wanted to close the 5th of the month and they have the 15th. These are massive differences for an FHA or VA buyer of
Yep.
money they're bringing to closing. And so that's why it's important that you're checking all those things.
I've also seen upgraded title policies that
Yep.
were never requested in the contract, but just.
The writers?
Yeah, that's 10% more.
Everyone asks, why do they do that? And so, do I need a writer? Do I want a writer? And what people forget is that if you transfer title, like Brandon bought a property because he can, and he decided he wants to transfer it to his LLC, if he transfers that property, the title insurance may not be in effect because he's transferred to an additional entity. That's why people buy writers and things
Right.
like that. But again, they put it on there to upsell you. And pads are a big difference. I always put a pad on every net sheet I do, $500 to $1,000. escrow usually puts about $300. And it's nice to have a pad, because when something happens you didn't plan on, those are real costs. Yeah?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to put my hand up so I could get a word in edgewise between you guys. So this is
She
the
said you were
first
edgy.
time in my career that I actually had a client call and about the closing statement. She's like, why does my agent have to look at my closing documents? And I'm like, well, usually they want to be able to make sure that all of the, anything you guys agreed upon with the seller or buyer or whatever are there, because we may not necessarily know that you have an additional contribution for whatever the case may
Sure.
be, unless that information has been provided to us. This agent just so happened to be on the listing and the buy side of it, so he was looking at both sides. And she's like, I've been purchasing homes throughout my lifetime. I bought at least 10 homes, and I've never had an agent ask me this question to look at my closing statement first. I'm like, well, you're welcome and congratulations. You've got an amazing agent who wants to protect you as you go into this final process and making sure all of your stuff is on there. So.
I think it's setting the expectation of what you do for the money you earn.
That's right.
Right? I mean, if I'm not doing these things, what am I really doing for the client? And people like new home sites, right? You go into a new home site and buyers all the time will say, well, why do I need an agent? There's a rep that's right there. Well, they don't work for you, they work for the builder.
Right.
Right? And so the whole point is, my job in those situations is to question everything and to see what kind of value I can deliver to my client. It's the same reason why we question the closing disclosure.
Yeah, I
See
think-
what kind of value we can deliver.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we have as agents, and I see this in almost every agent, is that we don't convey to the buyer or the seller or our client our value by showing them the things that we do during the transaction. So many things that we do are quote unquote behind the scenes. Like, it's when the client's not there, when we're on the phone arguing about this, or negotiating about this, however you want to call it, right? So one thing, my assistant tells me that I'm showboating when I do this, but it's okay. When I go to a signing, like the first thing I do, whoever's there to sign them, I make them dig out that closing statement out of their pile of paperwork, and it's typically 3 or 4 down before they're going to get to it, and say, I need to review that before you guys even start signing stuff, because I want to make sure it's right. And that's just me conveying to my client, hey, this is part of the value that I bring to the deal. It's me trying to protect you, right? So they don't know that I've requested it before. They don't know that I've already reviewed it 2 days ago or a day ago. But I'm just trying to show them that, hey, this is what I do for you. And so it's good that you review it in front of your clients. And no, I put my glasses on, I put it on, I look at them.
Doesn't even need glasses. The other thing I want to talk about on this closing disclosure is credits and what they're for different things in the transaction. One of the big things is repairs, right? So close your ears, Shelley. No lender wants to hear about repairs on a closing disclosure, because then they're going to want the repairs done, right?
Well, they don't want to lend money on the house that's in disrepair.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't even make sense.
But if you find out about that problem while docs are there waiting to be signed, you got a big problem, because now they have to redisclose the CD if the amount's too large. And we used to just be able to push those things through, no problem. But that's why preparation is important, making sure that these things happen way before, not here at the closing table. That's what scares me.
Nothing scares you, Chris. Well, let's talk about closing items. Talking about following through and taking care of your client through the process. We've had a lot of issues where people, when they close, they're expecting multiple remotes and multiple keys.
Yeah. You know, the contract I read it the other day, it says you get any of the mailbox key, door keys, things like that. Well, if I don't have any, you ain't getting any, right? And so you can get extremely specific if you chose to. I mean, I don't want to get my offer rejected, right? But I had an agent one time write an addendum that went with the purchase agreement that says, you will transfer 4 garage remotes for each of the garage doors. You will transfer 3 house keys. You will transfer 1. I mean, she specifically stated out, anal retentive, specifically stated out all of these things. And guess what?
Still bitter.
You know how much those things cost? They're $40-$50 a piece. The alarm remotes that you can't get for the alarm anymore are gone. And so the point was that she did her client a service because she was diligent and the things that had to happen. And funny enough, another major broker, no one here, argued that you couldn't do that. And so until we brought the addendum up that everyone signed, he's like, okay, I guess we have to do that. They went and bought the remotes.
Well, I think you have a good point there too. I mean, if you get 2 like specific and you want, I mean, you could scare a seller off.
You
I
could.
mean, you get into a house, like you come to my house and we've got 2 garage doors and we do have 1 remote for each, but the bottom line is I'm not gonna go buy 2 more remotes for a house I'm leaving. That doesn't even make sense. It's all programmed in our cars. So be careful, be specific.
But you just said
You
it's
gotta
programmed
watch it.
in your car, and I'm the
Yeah.
one buying the house.
Yeah, well-
So-
I'm gonna give you 1 remote and you can program it into your car, but that's kind of how things are
When
going.
it comes down to just like the closing statement, is if you're a listing agent, you need to be reviewing and actually reading the RPA, because if
Yeah.
you're not, you're gonna miss stuff like this and put your
Client
seller in a
in a
bad
bad
predicament, or you're going to be buying remotes.
Vaughn and I talked about it with Dave Sanders on the meeting last week and talked about, leaving the property in a certain condition when you move out of it. And it says broom clean. I mean, broom clean doesn't mean I've had the home clean or steamed or sanitized or anything else. It just means I've taken away my belongings and you can be broom swept. By the way, the vacant land purchase agreement used to say you had to leave the property broom clean. Right? Because nobody read these things when they put them through.
Broom sweat condition, right?
But anyway,
So I just had a close last Friday that the agent called me up and said that the sellers didn't mop the floor in the kitchen before they left. And I said, well, the contract doesn't say she should mop the floor.
Yeah.
It says it should be broom swept. She's like, well, no, I always have my clients mop their floors. I'm like, great, I appreciate that you do that. I hope I buy a house from you someday, but the bottom line
Maybe you
is,
could have your client mop this one.
but the whole point was if I would have put it in an addendum that said you will do these things, and I think the whole point is that when people just write addendums and they don't say anything or they don't preempt it or say, hey, I'm just letting you know my client cares about these things, then you're just setting yourself up to fail, right?
Yeah.
If you send over a 20-point addendum or a 20-point counter,
Yeah.
I saw one of those the other day. If you have 20 items on a counter offer, just burn it and start over.
Start over. Request a new offer, because that's not gonna work.
That's not gonna work.
Redo. What about
you-
for the mail key though? Is that really something you pass along to your?
It's in the contract.
It's interesting because the post office actually has a guideline that says when new owners take over a mailbox, they'll rekey the property. Have you ever tried to get a mailbox key for the post office?
Yes.
It's an experience in itself.
The post office is an experience in itself.
But better than that, the mailbox number.
Yeah.
You ever hunt? You know a new neighbor because they're trying their key in every mailbox thing until it works.
Yeah, but the thing is, sometimes you actually have to wait for the mailman to show up to the thing so that you can put your own lock on there with your own key.
Can you do that?
Yeah, some places you have to. We had to here, and I have, as property manager, we've had to do it for a
I think
few
that's
years.
actually against the mail code too.
Really? I didn't know you could do
They
that.
actually
I didn't know
told
you
us.
could
That's what
do
they
that
did.
either.
It's like it's really nice.
Like
It's
how
got
many of
rubber
us
sides
have
on it.
how many of us have our own locks and keys that will fit
You can
in
buy them.
locks? That doesn't make sense.
You can buy them.
Buy them at Home Depot. So,
So
It's
by
a
the
profit
way,
center.
if you have to go get the post office to do it for you, you take your closing statement down there, your certified closing statement, just so you can tell your clients, and they'll schedule the lock to be changed. It takes 2 to 3 weeks. So don't expect to get any mail anytime soon. And if you're forwarding mail from your old address, you have to let your clients know they got to figure out where to forward that to, because they won't get that mail
Exactly.
for 2 to 3 weeks.
And when you're sitting at the closing table and they say, where do you want your refund
Yeah.
check to go to? Or your closing check to go to? And you say your home mailbox of the house that you're moving
Yeah.
or moving into, you're gonna have an upset client that they can't get into the mailbox. And so that's why you should wire it, or the agent could pick it up for them and deliver it. That's what I used to do.
I've actually
nice
even
of you.
seen that.
I know, right?
I've actually seen
I
it.
mopped the house while I was there.
I've seen it in the 2 to 3 weeks where the mailbox gets so full they take the mail back to the post office, right? So
It's not 2 to 3 weeks. It happened to me this week. I picked up my mail last week on Monday, and I didn't pick it up until like Thursday. And I go to the box, and there's this like orange notice in there. It says, "We've deemed this house as vacant." And I'm like, what? And so I had to go all the way down to the post office, and it's like literally 10 pieces of mail. And so I come back and I take the notice, and I said, "No, I live there. I really do." And so I'm like waiting for the mailman each day now so that he doesn't deem my house as vacant.
funny, they just keep packing it in.
They don't stop.
trying to figure
Oh, well.
out how to get more.
So, anyway, solar transfers.
Solar transfer. So before we go on to solar, you talked about Ring doorbells and things like that, right? Alarms that are, a service that you get with the property.
Yeah.
Best
Smart
practice in
devices.
transferring them.
Smart devices, yeah. So the new RPA that came out and then was retracted within about 3 hours of it actually coming out has a whole section that talks about smart devices.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they haven't put that back out. Tom's not here, so we can't ask.
So there is actually, Aldo has a pack working to put together some addendums on that. That's all
Okay.
I know on it. I don't know what they look like, but I know they've been talking and working on it.
So let's just be clear that if you see a Ring doorbell, if you see things that are smart devices at the property, cameras that are inside or outside the property, you need to address those in the RPA. They're not currently addressed, and so it's a gray area. You can argue that the doorbell is attached. Okay, I hear you, but the bottom line is, if it's gone when your client gets there, what do you do about that? I mean, who's gonna pay for that? How mad is your client gonna be? So you just have to be conscious when you're showing houses and you're writing contracts, that if it's got some type of smart device, you need to write that in the contract. If you want it to stay, it needs to be in the contract. I mean, one that I've seen that we've missed a couple of times recently is, they now, well, yeah, thermostats for sure, because they switch them back. Look, when they put their smart thermostat on, they keep the old one and then they just
Yeah,
switch it back. I
right.
mean, it's not very hard to do.
The problem with that though is, and I just had it happen, is all of those command for that, the apps, are on the old client's phone. And so we had a situation where the seller was upset with the buyer. And
Oh
so the
my-
buyer moves into the property, agent didn't really collaborate those transfers. And so the seller keeps cranking down the air conditioner or up the heater just to, mess with the new client that wanted to haggle over $30,
Now he's got a.
Because they get
Now you get a $300 power bill.
And then like the Ring doorbell, they can see it, and so what would happen is the new buyer was trying to get access to the doorbell. He couldn't get the app to transfer, and so they kept sending out a rep to help with that in the alarm system, and the seller kept canceling the appointment, because they were like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not paying for that, and so those things could
So
be
you gotta
addressed.
get it worked out, right?
Yeah.
The one that people miss a lot now are smart garage door openers. There are now garage door openers that
Because I have dumb ones.
cameras on them, and so that you can, and so look at the garage door and see if there's a camera hanging off of it.
Not only included, but also reset
transfer.
back to factory so
Yeah.
you can transfer them.
Yeah.
That'd be
Factory
very
settings so we
important.
can use it.
No, it led into the solar transfer, and so we've had a number of issues lately, and I think the whole thing comes to preparation and well-written transfer addendums. And so if there's a solar piece on the property, getting those details while writing the offer is really important. We had a situation about a few months ago where the buyer actually can't qualify for their loan, not through you, but on another lender, because of the cost and the debt incurred by the solar contract. And so they actually would be denied for it because of the way the ratios worked out. Now, you've got to be really thin margin
pretty
if that
thin.
happens,
Yeah.
but the whole point was that caused a hiccup in the transaction where it didn't close. And so I think the point is to get the contract on the solar company, understand the costs related to it, and get a plan for it to be transferred.
Well,
How you're doing.
where do I get the contract?
Call Google.
Call.
I'm not kidding you. Like,
Call who?
Google. You can
Google.
Google the solar company and get a
And
number
get it.
for somebody. You can call the other
Don't-
agent, get the info.
But how do you know who put the?
But don't take the seller's advice for it. You can, on the PR, there should be a lien against the property.
Yeah.
From the company, right? And so you can go that, but don't take the seller's.
PR, preliminary title
Yeah.
report.
That you should be reviewing,
Not like PR, like good press.
right? But don't take the seller's word for it that it's been released or anything else. We had that same situation actually was released.
Yeah.
The loan company did, or the solar company did release it off of title so that they could refinance, so the new mortgage could be in first position, then they put it back. So he's like, well, I got these documents showing it was released. Well, it really wasn't,
Yeah.
so it wasn't paid for. And that's the one where the seller didn't want to pay it off. The buyer was willing to finance it in their name, but in doing that, it threw off the loan ratios on the house.
And I think the point is, when you investigate things like that, the proper protocol is to write down the information and document it. So I talked to Jane at Solar City. I'm just using that for example. I don't know if you can do that anymore. Jane's number is this number. We spoke at 3:00 and Jane said these things.
She got laid off.
She got laid off when it happened.
She got
At
that.
3:05.
3:05. Here's all the information, Mr. Buyer. Go do your own due diligence based on what I provided you. If you have any questions, let me know. And put that email in your file, because now you have proof later when amnesia happens from the seller or buyer that you did those things.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that the solar company, if you're in the process of trying to buy a property, the solar company will provide you a lease and the terms of that lease on the property. They'll also provide you the last 12 months of payments on that property, so you can actually go and see what the power bill has been on that property. And then what we've done in the past is we've actually called the power company. We'll pick a a like property on the same street that faces the same way, so it's on the same side of the street, same square footage, and we'll call the power company and ask for 12 months of their power bills because they don't have solar, and we compare those.
That sounds
two.
like a lot of work. You must
No,
get
it's
paid a lot.
super easy. Seriously, it's one phone call.
Great idea.
Sounds like a whole job.
Sound
We
like
know-
3 phone calls.
No, actually, I've never done it. Danielle typically does it for me, but it works really well because when you have a client that's teetering on whether they want to
It's a
take
huge
over a
thing.
solar thing,
Yeah.
they can see the savings they're going to make. And I'll tell you, when solar came out, I was like, "Hey, touching that. I'll never have solar. There's no way it's worth it." But every time we've done it, the seller
Savings.
saves money. It's amazing.
And what a service you provided
Yeah.
to them that you're able to do that. That's
The other thing, when should you start looking into that? At the time you take the listing,
Yes.
not when you get the offer. And I know the
Yes.
offers are coming fast, but you should really start, because sometimes the solar company isn't prompt on return.
And no offense to anyone out there, when you call me up and say, "Hey, Chris, I have solar. What should I do?" I'm going to outline these things. You're like, "Well, how do I get the number for them?" And I'm not kidding. Google.
Wait, you get that call
All the time,
What should I
all
do
the
with solar?
time. There's agents out there, and you know who you are. Literally, you can take all of that information and even serial numbers, and you put it right into the search bar, and it'll pop up the info,
Yep.
and you'll have all of that for context. And it's a better source that isn't sitting in our liability factor.
So that's a listing agent who's trying to get information on that?
Or a buyer's agent.
Yeah, we've done it on the buy side mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, our buyers like, I don't know if I want to buy it with solar, so we'll do a comparison with a property without it and that property and.
But I always feel like from
amazing.
a listing agent standpoint, like even with condos, when I can call into a listing agent and I ask them about the condo info, they're like, here's who that was just recently transferred, and that to me looks like they did their homework in preparing for the listing. I wouldn't
questions
think
for
they'd
those?
just say.
Sounds like a lot of work.
I'm asking for a friend.
Danielle will do it. It's something to do.
That's great.
So solar is something we're gonna run into, right? I mean,
A lot.
even on the, I don't know, there was a question this time on the ballot about whether solar should be a mandatory electrical source for everybody, right? Wasn't that one of the questions?
It was about
Yes,
changing the dependency
Yeah.
as a state on renewable energies and making their goal. My brother is an environmental attorney, right? And he lives in Louisiana, and he just got appointed to this group that's going to make Louisiana environmentally conscious by 2035, where that means they have complete renewable energies. And Nevada's trying to trend that way because we all have this vacant land that you can put solar farms in.
Yeah, well, so that just tells me that they're gonna, at some point, everyone's gonna have some type of solar. So if you're an agent that's gonna sell real estate for the next, I don't know how many years, you probably should find out about solar. You gotta learn about
And
it.
there's a lot of articles on those you can stay up to date on. I mean, there are multiple sites out there and locally, like Nevada Independent and the others, that constantly are sending out information about it. And there's a guideline under reasonable skill and care that says, if everyone knows that this is going on,
You
you
should-
have a duty as an agent to have an understanding of what everyone else knows.
And
There's
that's
new
good. Go ahead.
No, there's new construction sites that are actually
Yeah.
being built mandatory. You don't have an option. It is built with solar on it,
Yep.
so.
Yeah.
And it's the roof tile itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is really cool.
And along the lines you're saying, that ballot question wasn't even just to put it into law, it was to put it into the Nevada State Constitution,
Constitution,
yeah.
which isn't easy to change after the fact, so it's here.
And if it passes in
Did it
this,
pass?
I think
I
they
don't
all did.
remember.
I think they all did.
but if it does, it doesn't happen this session, it happens the following session,
Yeah.
I think.
Two-
Because they have to,
Has to happen twice.
yeah, something like that. I don't remember.
I just didn't know if it passed or not. I'm sure we're still counting ballots, so nobody knows.
So
Yes or no?
we had a crazy scenario happen. It was Elizabeth Abentangelo that told me about it, and she had an SRPD. She's the buyer's agent. She got the SRPD from the listing agent, and so it's a seller that had the property as a rental and they never occupied it, but it's been a rental for a long period of time, right? And so
How long?
I don't know, like longer than 5 years.
The seller's basically saying we've had multiple property management companies over the years
A lot of people have been through this place, right?
because of the damages.
Yeah. And so what the seller did was they took the SRPD, and so if you read the SRPD, the first line above all of the questions says, check all that apply where you know that there's an issue, right, or a problem. And so they took every box and checked yes on every single box all the way through the document. And then on the second page, they wrote, seller has not
The house
occupied
had a
property.
pool in it?
They checked yes on everything. I don't know the whole details, but yes was the commonality, right? And so they wrote a disclosure on the back saying, we've never occupied the property, we don't know what's wrong with anything in there, and so we've done this to make you aware that we don't know. The weird part about it is, I mean, if you're a property manager or you're the seller, you pay repair bills, right? If the property has something that breaks, you take care of it because you have to write a check for it. Your management company takes care of it and then they bill you for what it is. You have knowledge of those issues, but your knowledge means that it's now been fixed. If you're the seller and you have no knowledge of any issue, you've not been told about it, the tenant burnt the house down and rebuilt it, but you didn't know, the SRPD actually protects that you're not responsible for what you didn't know, only for what you did know that you paid for.
So you're mad the seller did this?
I'm not mad, I just think it's crazy because
You're actually
no one
not-
explained it.
You're actually not responsible because you marked, yes, there was a pool, and yes, we've had damage or problems with it. It basically is saying, buyer, you're on notice, assume that there's something wrong with that pool and do your inspection. If you want to move forward, then you move forward and deem us
But
not liable.
they didn't read it, that's what I have a problem with. It says check yes to something you know there's a problem with.
I think they knew, they're just gaming the system.
It drives me crazy.
What if he just was as is?
People don't read.
All over, does that
Because
mean?
Read.
As is
That's
doesn't-
basically what it's saying.
As is doesn't really mean anything.
No?
The seller could have literally said, no, I have no knowledge of an issue. I've never lived in the property. I've never occupied. I've never been told of a bill. I've never had a problem. Buyer, do your due diligence. I mean, that's all I'd have to say. But now you can't even simply follow the instructions on a document? How would I know any of these are right or wrong?
Well, I think if anything ever, I mean,
Yes.
yeah, this actually did happen. This is real.
Like yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they got that. I think the buyer was going to cancel based on what she said. All over this disclosure that
Yeah,
someone
well,
couldn't fill out.
I think by the seller doing this, they've actually put themselves in a bad position, not
Yeah.
necessarily a good position. Like, yeah, they've put them on notice that there's a possibility that there's something wrong with every possible mechanical thing of the house, but let's say the buyer did move forward and they get into the property and they find that there's something wrong with it that the seller absolutely knew about but didn't disclose it.
Well, they
Because
disclosed
they're
everything.
not disclosing.
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
They didn't
explain-
address specific
Yeah,
issues that they
didn't-
knew about.
They did not
Now, there
disclose.
you'd have an argument, because when it says, please explain,
Yeah.
Yes,
they didn't
not
explain, right?
Well, they just said,
did.
there's a problem with everything.
No, they did
There
not.
there could be a problem with everything.
I feel
Well,
like-
they knew that they paid for an insurance claim on something that happened that they didn't really fix right because their brother Larry did it and saved them $20. I mean, that's the crap that happens.
Look,
Not a
there's
good
nothing
practice.
wrong with Larry, okay? But hey, you said clue reports. Like, does
Oh,
it-
clue report,
What
yeah.
about a clue report? Can't we just get a clue report?
So remember when Carfax came out and what's a Carfax? A Carfax is the damage that's ever happened to a car
That's been reported.
that's been reported.
Uncle
That's right.
Larry didn't fix.
Correct.
That's
right.
He pulled out that dent.
Yeah.
A clue report is basically any report of an insurance claim that's ever happened on a property. It's not the game Clue like Professor Plum in the library, that kind of thing, but it basically tells you that this property's had these things filed against it.
So Larry did it with the plumbing wrench in the garage, is what you're
So,
saying.
a clue report,
Yes.
a clue report is actually used to determine what the insurance rates are going to be.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, people wait till the last minute to order the insurance. They pull the clue report and you could have a really high insurance policy,
Well, we actually had one last week that they were unable to get insurance because of the claims on the
right?
property.
And then a lot of that comes with flooding and stuff like
Yeah.
that, because what follows water is usually mold. So there's usually another claim coming. So the insurance company will deem it uninsurable or a very high rate.
Can we go back to a few yeses? And so here's my problem. This is a simple issue. What the seller can do whatever they want as the seller's disclosure. That's why it's the seller's real property disclosure, right? But we as agents have one job, Mr. Seller. The state law requires that you provide a disclosure to the buyer, notifying them of any issues that you know about or feel that you want to disclose on the property. On the directions of this document, it says check yes to any that apply, know that any that don't have an issue, and NA if they're not even there, like other could be an NA. The document that you're going to fill out gives you protection that if you don't know of something, you won't be charged for it, but it's your choice. Check the boxes, I can't touch it.
Well,
you need to do it.
So here's the interesting part now that you bring that up. I wasn't going to talk about this, but here's the interesting. So there's some things on the SRPD that probably don't apply to the property.
Oh, yeah.
Right? How about a fountain? How many properties have you ever bought and sold?
What do you
that actually
consider
have
a fountain?
Well, that's a good question, right? Is it inside the house, outside the
That
house?
drip sprinkler I've had in the front yard has been a fountain for a while.
How about the septic tank? Or how about the well? Right? Like these things may or may not apply. Well, here's the challenge by just marking yes and putting this blanket disclosure is that those things don't, what about the alarm? The house doesn't have an alarm, but they said it does. So as a buyer, I move into the property and go,
Where's my
where's
alarm?
my freaking alarm? hey, listing agent,
That's
I need my
concerning.
alarm. Can
Well,
you give me an
no,
alarm?
They said there's issues with it. We don't have one.
Yeah, but if there's issues with it, it should at least be here. Give me a.
You're gonna confuse the people out there that are worrisome
But
about this.
here'd be my question. So you sit down with your seller, the seller says, I'm filling it out this way. You explain it to
Yeah,
him,
yeah.
then what do you do as a listing agent?
So the whole thing is
Go
that-
talk to your broker.
Yeah, go talk to your broker. Google.
Well, no, do you walk away from the list?
No, not at all, not at all. I think the whole point is that you give the benefit of the doubt. Mr. Seller, I got your SRPD, thank you for doing that. I noticed that there are a couple of items on there that could run into an issue with the buyer. Here are the 5 or 6 that there are. Do you want to pass it along the way it is, or do you want to fix or change those? It's your choice. At least I've done the job of providing them with the representation of the document isn't correct. Do you want to send it the way it is, or do you want to
Great.
fix it?
Great education there. You've done
I
it.
put the email in my file.
They made their decision. Now you're the buyer's agent.
Yep.
And you
did
get
it-
this.
You did that in an email.
Yep,
Yeah.
I did it in the email, so
No,
I have
not
documented.
face-to-face.
So now you
Same
have the
thing.
buyer, and now the buyer has the option to look over this and
Yep.
decide, so how do you handle that?
Same
Without saying you need to cancel this deal because this is crap.
And you make a really good point about this side of it, is it's not the buyer's agent that's supposed to do this, it's the buyer. Buyer's agent's talking to the buyer, Mr. Buyer, I'm just letting you know when I fill these out with sellers and they do them, they're supposed to check mark all the boxes. It says right here, and any yes is supposed to have a response. Here are the ones that they didn't do that on. What would you like to do? Well, I'd like them to address it. Okay, can you send me an email saying you'd like these items addressed? And then I, as the representative, forward on to the seller and say, hey, listen, there's a number of items that are concerning to my buyer. They pointed them out in the, not their information, but the context of their email. These are the items. Would you please explain more about it? Seller says, nope, go pound salt. Mr. Buyer, they said, go pound salt. Do you need some salt or do you have your own? Right? I mean, I'm only passing information.
Right.
And I've documented for my protection, because what's gonna happen is, buyer's gonna close, because buyer's a contractor, and he knows everything about everything. And he closes on the house, and then the water leak blows up, and he said he was good, but now it's gonna be $50,000. And he looks at me and says, Chris, why didn't you tell me that that needed to happen? I have an email, Mr. Buyer, where I told you that it wasn't filled out correctly, and you said that you knew everything about houses and that you were good. Any further questions? Right?
How else can I help you? I still contend if they mark yes on the pool and there is no pool, when I move in, I'm getting a
They're digging
pool.
one.
I'm calling up and getting the pool put in.
Well, they're getting one at Smith's. It's a nice
That's
above
fine,
ground
it's
little.
still a pool.
You may not fit, but you're getting one. Anyway, the whole point of it is that this scenario, as unfortunate as it is, could cause this property not to go through because they caused so much doubt with a buyer, and it's such a big issue, and now it's an ego thing. Well, it's right. We can do that, or our attorney says it's okay. Instead of just looking at it and saying, this buyer's now really concerned, they don't understand why you did it,
Yeah.
can we just get some clarification?
The SRPDs point things out so that the buyer can ask questions. And
Yep.
if they're looking at something is concerning, they have the right to go back to the seller and ask them to
Explain.
explain it, or pass that along to the inspector and say, we want you to look closer at this because they've had issues about it.
Do you remember when the SRPD first came out, it had all of these questions in a little tiny box for the yeses and the explanation of what the problem was?
Oh, yeah.
And so,
I went at the bottom.
at the very, very tiny box, like you couldn't
Yeah.
even type in it, and then they created a whole page so that you could explain it.
Yeah.
I had a seller one time who literally wanted to go into volumes, which is her right, about all the items that she knew wrong with her house, and so that's why they make all of the backsides of all those pages blank, right?
No.
Come on, think about it. All of them are blank, so you could write as much as
So
you want.
did your client write at the end of her
3
explanation?
pages full.
And it was the last line to say, and this is why I'm selling this house?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what-
Now, do you think the buyer was well disclosed?
Yeah, and do you think the buyer felt good about what they were buying?
They absolutely
I think
did.
so.
So I think the point is that we are the middleman in the SRPD.
Or
right?
woman?
Okay, or woman,
Person.
excuse me. We're the middle agent, if that helps you.
Yes.
But we can't make decisions for the buyer or the
No.
seller, right? And so get the answers in writing and put it in your file, and people will do what they'll do.
On that post, Vonda made a great point about the fact that a seller just wanted to give full disclosure of everything they didn't know. A simple letter or a simple point in that context box of, Mr. Buyer, I'm letting you know full disclosure, I've never lived in the property. I checked mark no to everything because I didn't know of an issue, but I don't know anything wrong with it. I don't know there's any problems, and I haven't gotten any repair bills. That's all they had to say.
Yeah.
But yet now they caused this whole issue because they just couldn't do that. That's why I have a problem.
Do you normally have the SRPDs go with the inspection or go to the inspector if they do a home inspection on it?
You bring up a great point, Shelley. Would it be better to have the SRPD before the inspection?
Yes.
Or after? And so a common practice used to be you would write the offer as the buyer's agent. The seller, because they've already gotten the document, when they would counter, would send the SRPD along with the counter. There are multiple 3-page counters out there that actually have that guideline. And they would have fully disclosed to you all the issues that they knew about the home.
Right.
And so when you're countering, you could make a determination if this is the right home for you or not.
Never has to be taken off the market if it's not, right?
Good point.
Well, and inspectors, I think it's important that you're offering multiple
Absolutely.
inspection companies, because I hear too often an agent goes, this is my inspector, they're the best inspector, and when they miss something,
Yeah.
So I just,
Your best inspector just cost me $1,000. So
Exactly.
Can you
And-
split it with me?
you know what their liability is? The cost of their inspection,
Cost of their
right?
inspection.
I had a guy that worked for me as a sales manager. His name was Larry Kaplan, fantastic guy, any of you that know him. And he had the coolest email I'd ever seen for a home inspection notice. He would say, hey, Mr. Buyer, I'm letting you know that we've got your contract accepted, earnest money's been deposited, escrow's been opened with this company, and he put the info. Now it's your job to choose your inspector. You have 10 days to complete due diligence starting yesterday, and here are 6 companies, and literally, he put 6 different companies and links to their website review pages. You can make a determination of the right company for you. Now, of course, his preferred one was at the top, and he gave those links. Once you've selected that person, let me know and we'll set up the appointment. How could you not say that you have the ability to pick anyone you wanted, right?
I only have 3 on mine. I guess I'll have to up my game.
You could have 4, you could have whatever.
I'll have 7 by tomorrow. Now
big
that
thing is
Larry has
just
6.
give them
Danielle will put
options.
it on there.
Danielle, up that, would you?
I asked him, how did you come up with 6? He said, these are all the people that within the last 16 months that my clients have picked or I've worked with. And so I have knowledge of them and their company. That's why I put them up there. I was like, wow, that makes sense.
That's beautiful.
Do you fill out SRPDs too?
Explain.
Oh, we need to have a hot topic every week for.
I tell you what.
Goodness, yeah.
So,
Still offended that you're mad at Larry, though. That's what I'm just saying. Larry.
no, I was mad at Larry's cousin.
He
I
always
wasn't mad
does
at
a
Larry.
good job.
So we have a couple of things coming up that I think are important to notice everybody about. The first one is that we have a CE class for 1031 exchange processes with Candace Meyer with IPX Exchange, and that's Thursday at 1 p.m. It's going to be virtual, so you do have to sign up. So if you haven't signed up yet, do it, because free CE is hard to come by.
Only on Zoom.
Only on
So, so to be clear, I know it was originally came out that it was an in-person class. It is not.
It's not.
It's only
It's been
online.
exchanged.
No food
Yes,
will
it's-
be delivered.
Yeah, no,
It's been exchanged.
Patty,
It starts at 10:31.
that's what I'd have.
Why didn't you think of that earlier? That would have been great.
Actually,
So why we have it on here, 1031 exchanges have become more prevalent because people now have a ton of equity in the marketplace. Values have gone up and now they want to sell their property. And so I think the important thing is that you don't need to be a 1031 exchange expert, but you do need to know what it means. Because if you have an investor that's selling an investment property and you have the ability to save them a ton of money in capital gains, why would you not want to have that tool in your arsenal?
Right.
Right? And I think that's the whole point of this class, is so that you know about it. And I've had clients, exchange to multiple properties, so multiple deals are a good
Just can't
thing.
touch the money.
Yep.
yeah.
But yeah, key word is investment properties, not your personal residence, right?
And you can get loans on these. That's what people
Oh,
forget too.
For sure.
You know?
It's an asset, basically,
Yeah.
and it's just the exchange piece of it.
So the other big event coming up in 2 weeks, Tuesday the 24th, in lieu of a sales meeting, we're actually going to do a business planning workshop
Yep. In person,
in person,
Not virtually.
not virtual.
not virtually.
person.
It's in person, socially distanced.
Starts at 11:01.
11:01.
No, it's going to be from like 8:30 to about 11:30, so it'll be quite a process. We will provide breakfast. You will be required to RSVP because we're not quite sure of the amount, depending on the venue and what we can do safely.
Yeah.
But we will do that. We will probably put together some virtual workshops and something that won't be as long, but be able to, so that everyone can work on their business plan and that. But some of the things we want to look at is the goals you want for next year and the behaviors that you have that align yourselves with those goals. I think there's, and then what inspires you? What is your motivation? And so we're going to dig deep and really find out what drives you and put together a plan and help hold you accountable.
So if I RSVP for this, I've got it prepared for 2 things. One is I've got it prepared to talk about my business plan.
Yep.
Yep.
Like write it down, think about it, like go through that process, and I got to be ready to eat breakfast.
Yeah, you gotta be
I was
ready.
gonna say, what you want and who you want to be. That's what I
You gotta be ready to step outside your comfort zone,
Okay.
work on your goals, and eat something you normally wouldn't eat.
You wouldn't need to.
Ooh, what's
I'm
for
just
breakfast
kidding.
And
right
by the way,
now?
eating breakfast is working on my.
Right? And so after this meeting, we will post a link to the Eventbrite registration in the comments here. So please RSVP so that you can be the first on the list.
You've always business planned. I know that I have in my business. And what are the benefits of it? I mean, let's tell them why do you do business plans?
Well, I think for me, it's because I need to know where I'm going. I need to know. I need to know every single day of my business what I need to do, numbers wise, to get to where I want to be financially. If it's
Yeah.
a financial goal or whatever, I'm a numbers based person, so I have to know what my numbers are. I have to know what each team member's numbers are. So that I can hold them accountable to that.
Yep.
And I think that's another big part of business planning is great, but if you don't implement some type of plan where you can be held accountable to those numbers by somebody who can hold you accountable, it doesn't really work. So for me, it's about accountability. It's about knowing where I'm going, what my roadmap looks like for next year, like how many deals in January, how many in February, March, and as you know, I even scale mine for the year. January, February, March are a little bit flatter. We kind of bump up during the summer, spring, summer, and then kind of start falling off again in the fall. And so for me, it's just about knowing where I'm going. I have to know 12 months is a long time, and I just need to know whether at the end of each month I'm on track or if I'm behind, and what do I need to up my game on, and what do I need, what can I not worry about.
I've always loved the fact that in our business, because our business is very simple, like they say, but it's not easy. And it is absolutely true that, if you want to close 50 deals, that you can take those 50 deals in the different areas that you'll be closing them, either listings or buyers or referrals, and you can actually back out from those numbers a plan. And that plan leads to activities, which we've talked about many times. So if I put that number on a page, whether it's $300,000 or $100,000, it's got to happen somewhere. And it's going to happen from where I invest my time. And so if I have those two sides of activities, and I'm saying, you know what, I'm just going to sit in my office all day and not make any phone calls. Well, you're doing activities in fantasy land,
Yeah.
right? But if you say, wow, I'm going to do open houses to generate the 25 buyers I need, and I'm going to do them 4 days a week, and I'm going to do them for 3 hours a day, and I'm going to make this many contacts, and if I don't get that many contacts, I'm going to go find them, but I got to hit this contact goal to generate this many appointments to get these many deals. Literally, you can back that number out.
Yeah.
But the problem is, people come in and they say, how many homes you've sold? And you're like, well, I haven't sold any. Okay, well, we can help you sell one. We got to do some activities.
Yeah.
And that's what a business plan generates, is those daily things that you need to do, and you need to keep it, right? You don't shove it in a drawer and say, oh, that was fun.
Well, it needs
It's in
to
front
be,
of you
it needs to
every
be
day.
where you can see it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you need to be looking at it every single day. I mean, it's literally, I use a program called CTE from all my numbers, and I literally look at it every morning. It's the first thing I look at when I get to the office. I mean, you need to know where you're at number-wise, so you know where you have to go. It's interesting to me, one number that we don't track in real estate is number of hours worked.
Yeah.
Like every other job out there, if you have any other job, then one major thing they track is how many hours a week you work. We don't track that in real estate. We track, one of the biggest numbers we track is conversations.
Yeah.
How many real estate based conversations have you had? And how many do you even need to have per day or per week or per month to get to 50 deals, if that's what your number is? And you're right. We back that number down to say, okay, your goal today is to have 8 conversations about real estate. Now, let's figure out the activity that's going to cause those conversations. Is it open houses? Is it door knocking? Is it networking events? Is it calling your sphere of influence?
Yeah.
Is it cold calling the phone book? I don't know. Like, there's lots of activities. But I think the other thing that business planning does for you is it helps you zero in on what you're really good at.
Yeah.
And the example is, I've got 5, 6, 7 people on my team, and this agent kills it in open houses. And I've got another agent that goes to just as many open houses, does just as many hours, and does 0 deals for open houses. Like, when we know that, because we've tracked it, we can say, hey, you shouldn't really think about open houses for 2021, right? And you should think about doubling your open houses,
Yeah.
because whatever reason you convert at a high level and you don't. And by the way, your sphere of influence is killing it. let's double up on your sphere of influence, right? We double down on the things that work.
Yep.
But if we don't know what's working because we're not tracking our numbers and we don't set a goal, then you're just out there having as much fun as you can have on a daily basis, and that's cool too, I guess, but
So there's some great great things that you want to bring to the planning is obviously where your business come from and things that, and if you don't have that stuff, it's okay, we're going to help you. So at least you'll be on track next year to be able to do it. But we'll send out a checklist to the people that are registered on the best items to bring or the best
Absolutely.
information so that
Best
you can make
numbers.
the most effective use of this time, so.
And I think that with anything, if you've never used a business plan, or like I said, you've never had a coach, you've never done these things, you don't get instantaneous results from a lot of things. You've got to put some time into it. You've got to, because you're changing a habit. The habit was I didn't pay attention and I really didn't have a plan or a schedule, and now I've created one, and it takes 30 days to make a habit, and I have to be in a good habit to have the results. And so I think the other thing you got to do is you got to come with a really good mindset, because you're going to change a lot about yourself and your business. But why are you doing it? Just like you said, you don't track hours, because the question is, if I had to write a check for what I did here today, would you write yourself a check? And you are right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And so usually, because of our accountability, because of our mindset, we don't even acknowledge that we didn't do what we should have done, right? We did about an hour's worth of work, but we were here for 6 hours.
Yeah.
That's what most agents are doing.
So this workshop's for the people that are serious about making their business a business next year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not somebody that
Let-
just wants to
let
wing
me-
it again.
I'll just throw this out there. If you're not coming serious about a business plan and building your 2021 and you're just coming for breakfast, just tell me, I'll buy you breakfast somewhere else. But don't get in the
I was
middle.
gonna make that offer, I'm glad he did.
Don't get in the middle of, this is gonna be a pretty serious thing, right? I mean, if you're not serious about building a business plan, maybe hold an open house on the 24th by, around 11 o'clock instead of coming to this.
Real quick before we end this meeting, I think I was talking to everybody about open houses, and I was getting these calls, when can we do open houses? Let us know, we really want to do them. And so this week I went online to check out how many open houses were going on. Guess how many there are right now?
Not very many.
10.
6.
Yeah.
6.
I got letters from people. I want to do open
cold
houses.
outside.
It's cold outside, yeah. But I think the point is that, open houses are an activity that it does a couple of things. One, it gives you the ability for consumers to come in and meet you. But 2, there's a lot of downtime at an open house that you could use to be making phone calls and working on your business.
They could do paperwork.
Yes.
They could turn their files in while they're doing an open house. I mean, think about all of the things that would do, like your file would come in, your check would come in, you get paid right away. Like, there's a lot of good stuff that could happen.
You could
from that.
maximize the activity.
Yeah.
The exposure too, since there's so many people that are not doing open houses, if you're
Yeah.
putting all your signs up there, it used to be a barrage of multiple agents. You had to figure out which home you were going to by following the sign. You'd be
There-
the only one out there.
There was a guy, we were at Inman, New York a couple of years ago, and you may have been there for this one, because I know we went to New York at 2 different times for it. Military guy, he got out of the military and he decided he was going to get into real estate. And so he had a very diligent schedule. He was very diligent in the things that he did. And so he went to his coach and he said, what should I do? And the coach said, well, can you hold an open house? And he says, it seems simple enough. And so he said, okay, do one every day and do it from this time to this time. So he was doing them from 2 to 6 every day. And so this guy over the course of a year held 270 open houses from 2 to 6. And I'm talking, like, he said every day, he had nothing else to do, and this is how he's going to feed his family. He did it every day. And, he missed a couple because of things going on, but he sold 100 homes his first year.
Wow.
But you think about it, do you have that diligence when you say, what are you going to do? From 2 to 6 every day,
Are you
I'm holding an
committed?
open house. Are you that committed? Because the business is there if you are.
She's gonna be holding open houses 2 to 6.
No, I'm
Just
gonna
wrote it
write
down.
that stat down. So it's every day, so 365 days of open houses equals 100 sales.
Well, no, he did 270 days of
270.
open houses, and he did
Oh.
100 sales
So it
from
wasn't
it.
Sold
listening.
100 homes.
But, I'm not guaranteeing these results, but the point
I
was.
think
Well, no,
you're safe
let's-
if you do,
no, let's
because if
be
you were to
really-
do that, you probably
You
will sell that many
absolutely
homes.
would.
Yeah, let's be
Yeah.
really clear. The first 10 or 15 that he did, he sucked at. He didn't convert anybody.
Absolutely.
But I think if there was any way to see his numbers for the year, they started to climb, like it looked like a hockey stick, right? And so it was kind of flat, it went up a little bit, and then all of a sudden it really took off because he got really good at not wasting his time from 12 to 6 every day.
They asked him, why did you do 2 to 6?
Or
And
2
he
to
says,
6.
when I was testing out the times with my coach, we found out that people are going to pick up their kids between that 2:30 to 4 o'clock time window. People are coming home from that 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock window, and it's like the perfect time of traffic in a neighborhood because of these reasons. And so I hear a lot of agents that say, well, you know, I would never do an open house in the morning. I'm doing my prospecting or this or that. Well, 2 to 6 is a perfect time window, you know, and it worked great for him. Loved it.
I don't think there's a bad time for an open house, to be quite honest, but
Anytime.
anytime's a good
Yeah.
time. But, I mean, you have to have a plan, and his plan was 2 to 6.
And he didn't
so it
change
worked.
houses every day, of course. He was residual around the same house many
In
times.
community.
Yeah, he literally moved in.
It was his own home, he didn't.
No, he didn't move in there and stay, but I mean, he moved into that house to hold it open every day.
Left his door open.
You're so literal. Why don't you go fill out SRPDs?
He made that his office for the week, for the
Got it.
month, whatever that looked like.
Oh, that's
Yep.
funny.
That's all I got.
That's all you got? I don't see any other questions on Facebook except for when the 1031 exchange class was, and that there's a link on the agent's signature. So with that, I guess we'll sign off.
Hot dog.
Have a great week.